Welcome to All For You Stories, where we want you to think different so you act different. Let's go. Becoming a butterfly. Pain is pain. The only thing worse than a doctor on drugs is a doctor pretending to be on drugs. Sitting in a circle of recovering drug addicts, the fact that he lied about being one of them consumed the doc. Listening to the brutally honest stories of the pain they felt while struggling with addiction and talking about the feelings he could not relate to made him feel like a complete fraud. Only Marquise, who sat next to him sharing with the others, knew about the doc's deception. For a moment, the doc embraced the guilt, although guilt was not something he was familiar with. If it were regret, he would recognize it. He had plenty of regrets. He could look back and identify something he would change at all stages of his life, from being mean to other kids as a child, to only looking out for himself during his college years, to everything he did to cause Monica to leave him. This all led to the meaningless life he lived today, swallowed up by misery and loneliness. But the guilt from stealing drugs from the hospital and lying to get into this NA meeting felt different. Rather than sit at home, dwelling on how he had let the pursuit of money and material possessions take away from everything in his life, it felt better to feel guilty than regretful. Pain is pain, and as time passed, the doc began to recognize the look in the eyes of the people around him, although he could not bear to look at them for long. When he locked eyes with the others, their glares had their own conversation. Something about this interaction made the guilt become unbearable. The doc knew he shouldn't be there. He turned to his right and looked at Marquise. Marquise looked back at him, and they both knew the doc had to go. The doc walked towards the door. All other conversations stopped, and everyone looked at him. He got about 5 steps before he heard a voice cut through the silence. "You don't gotta go. It don't matter why you here. You're here for a reason. And you don't have to go." The doc stopped walking. He wanted to tell him, "I'm not like you," but he didn't like the way that sounded. But pain is pain, and although he had never done drugs before, the pain he felt from the empty life belonged there. So instead of saying anything, he turned around, keeping his eyes down. The voice that spoke earlier spoke again. "You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just stay." The doc looked up at the voice. A skinny man with gray hair and crooked teeth stood with his hand extended toward the seat that the doc had just vacated. The doc silently walked back and sat down. He looked at Marquise and then the others. Most of them smiled at him, and the ones who didn't still made him feel like he belonged. So even though he had never done a drug in his life, the doc stayed in the NA meeting. The doc did not contribute anything to the meeting, but he listened to every word. To his surprise, it turned out to be much more than an NA meeting. The man leading the meeting, whom they called Henny, explained how, in addition to being a regular NA meeting, they connected the principles of NA to the Bible. Every conversation somehow came back to the Bible. This not only surprised the doc, but for the first time since medical school, he felt engaged, especially when Henny broke down something he had not studied since middle school: metamorphosis. Henny spent a solid 2 minutes talking about the characteristics of a caterpillar, from how it eats its own eggshell, to how it has 12 eyes, to how it can make itself look different so it does not get eaten by predators. Then he discussed the characteristics of a butterfly. He knew facts about butterflies that only the most nerdy of bug specialists would have known, like how they have over 24,000 species and can taste with their feet. He used this information to explain the metamorphosis he himself had to go through, how he couldn't just change pieces of himself, but he had to change himself completely. He needed to change his ways, his actions, and most importantly, his thoughts. The only way this could happen was by the same creator who changed a slimy, squirmy caterpillar into a beautiful butterfly. After this description and explanation, Henny opened up the conversation for anyone who wanted to talk about their own metamorphosis. A lady with a raspy voice and uneven hair spoke up first and described how she had let drugs separate her from her family. Although 2 of her kids still would not speak to her, one of them does. She has had to learn to accept that they may never forgive her, and she had to learn to forgive herself. Next, a woman who wore a baseball cap and glasses explained how God changed her from being a person who did drugs and would steal from anyone to get them to a person who wants a better life. She has to fight every day to stay clean and willingly admits she loses most of those battles, but her change is that she does not give up on trying. Lastly, Henny talked about his love for alcohol and how it controlled everything in his life, eventually leading to his addiction to other drugs. It broke up his family, destroyed his reputation, and put him on the verge of wanting to take his own life. His metamorphosis came when he gave up control and let Jesus be the manager of his life. He became obsessed with reading the Bible and followed it to guide him to making more changes in his life. The doc grasped something from everyone's situation, and by the time the meeting ended, he knew what he had to do. He didn't know exactly what to do, but he knew he had to start with a change. And it had to be a real change. Not just a little something here and there, but he had to become a butterfly. And he needed to go to the Creator to do it. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, do what you gotta do. Peace.